his whole focus is that the Chabura defined by when the Shechita is, and
right, so let's,
you could split up and there's just something.
right, but Rabbi Yehuda is going to still have to hold that there's a notion of that you vis-a-vis the Chabura are the only one who can eat this Korban Pesach. If you were part of a Chabura that did Shechita, everyone agrees, right, that you are chayiv to eat the Korban Pesach, and it's because of the fact that you were part of that Chabura Shechita is the reason why you can only eat this Korban Pesach. Okay, so everyone agrees with that. Let's take. Okay. Let's just say two steps. Okay, the first step, what you have to say is they're both grappling with something. You guys are hitting on. I told you guys are dancing around one issue about Chabura, right? What's taking place here by this?
They join together to do the mitzvah.
Like the subgroups.
But well, more than that. Originally, what were they? They were. No, one Chabura, right? One Chabura of Shechita's Korban Pesach, right? Now, the Torah comes along and tells you B'bayis Echad Yachal and the other one by Batum. Okay, so there's something happening here where now we don't look at them anymore as
one Chabura. We
can't just say Stam Chabura. We somehow have to fit bias into this notion of Chabura. Okay, we have to take the notion of bias and fit into Chabura. But it means that this is the key thing. Once the Chabura of Shechita is over, it sounds like there's a whole new system that's in place now of Chabura, right? That's not the Iker question, but something's changing about how we relate to the Chabura. Okay? So with that said, just give me two logical ways of how you could look at bias. Let's take Rav Shimon first. How is Rav Shimon learning what a bias is?
What's his saga?
He says that we all must eat together first, right? We start off eating together, but afterwards, if you break away, that's fine. You're allowed to go eat a makom acher. You can eat another house if you want to.
But, okay, so maybe it's like this, according to Rabbi Yehuda, right?
No, I want Rav Shimon first. Trust me, you don't want to do Rabbi Yehuda first. Okay, you can try, fine. Give me Rabbi Yehuda first, but okay.
Maybe just in the direction.
Okay. If Rabbi Yehuda looks at it as a makom, how does Rav Shimon view bias? What's a bias according to Rav Shimon? That's why Rav Shimon's the easier side. What's a bias according to Rav Shimon? How do you look at the bias? What does he mean? When Torah says bias echad yachal, what is he looking at a bias to mean? There's another way you can look at a bias.
Where everyone eats.
Meaning what? You're right.
Like a big mug, like a makom.
No, it can't be makom.
No,
he's not worried about a physical makom.
No, it's not makom. It's just where everyone eats the korban.
Okay, good. Now we're talking. Okay, so what is bias according to Rav Shimon? What the Torah means by bias is that it means a place where everybody eats together.
Yeah.
Okay. In other words, it implies a certain what do you call it? A cohesion of people. In other words, a house. There's the idea of a bias as a makom, and there's an idea of a bias as a household. Yeah. That's an abstract idea. For instance, when it says ner ishu beso, okay, it doesn't mean it means bnei bias. It doesn't mean that the house has to light itself. It means that there's something called a household. He's looking at the idea of bias as an abstract idea. How do I know that has to be the case? Because what does he say? He says, what does it mean by bias echad? That the chabura together. So what's he saying? Let's go in order. We're all one big chabura by shechita, okay? After shechita takes place, in a sense, you got to stop the conceptual clock, okay? There's such thing as the conceptual clock. Like, stop. What happens right now? It's almost as if to say that this whole notion of chabura dissolves, okay? It dissolves, because now we have a different phenomenon. And the phenomenon now is achila. Okay, achila is a different phenomenon. How do we know it's a different phenomenon? Because the Torah says, b'bayis echad yachal and batum yochlu. So it's telling us there's something different going on by the achila. So now imagine for a second, just imagine, okay, the chabura dissolves. Now what's going to reconstitute the chabura?
The makom.
Now according to Rav Shimon, what reconstitutes it? The people. Okay, in other words, it must be that everybody has to now eat together.
Right.
The eating together is what, the fact that everybody eats together is what reconstitutes the chabura. Okay, thus, what does he hold? He holds that everyone has to eat together. Okay, that's what actually looks at bias. Right, exactly. But if that's the case, why must he hold that it's no problem if you go ahead after you start eating here and you eat somewhere else?
Because he doesn't view it as a separate makom altogether.
Good.
It's the same Korban Pesach.
Right. Okay. Because there's no reality to makom according to Rav Shimon. There's no reality to the makom. There's no physical makom. So therefore, we're not. You gotta go slowly, okay? Slow. So according to Rav Shimon, I know you're trying to play out Rabbi Yehuda now. I understand that, but just get Rav Shimon solid. So Rav Shimon's going to say that once I leave, who cares if I leave? I'm still Just because Ezra Pinsky leaves the place for the eating the Korban Pesach doesn't mean he's still not part of the Chabura,
The
right?
already established, meaning the
Exactly,
Chabura and the Korban Pesach are
exactly.
already established
So I'll put it a
together.
different way. It's like this. It's like, just again, go in this conceptual order. Okay, all of us, the group of us came together to form the Chabura by the Shechita. Okay, then the Shechita is over. Now it's like we all go back to being Gavras, okay, so to speak. Now, but the problem is we know that a Gavra can't eat the Korban Pesach. You're part of a Chabura. So what's going to reconstitute our Chabura? The bias. But not the bias, the physical makom, the notion of us eating together. If we eat together, if we're koveya, the eating together, now what are we again? We're the chabura. But once you're identified as that chabura, right, there's no reality to the physical place. Once we become that chabura again, so if you go away, you're still part of the chabura, you're still abstractly related to the chabura, you're still Ezra, the guy who ate the Korban Pesach. A makom. Okay, so therefore, but more than that, what's the
They both
makom?
require a bias.
Not necessarily.
Places that you eat.
What's the function of the bias according to Rabbi Yehuda? What's it functioning to do?
It defines a place.
No, it is always a place.
It's like
A bias is a place, but what's it doing?
it's enhancing the mitzvah. Maybe not enhancing it, but using it to get to the mitzvah.
Well, okay, but in other words, what's the chiyuv then? If the bias, if he learns bias to be an actual makom, okay, now go back. We know that's why you have to balance these two things. He's definitely holding that bias means a makom, okay, but he's also holding that there's an idea of chabura by shechita.
Right,
Now, what happens? Let's go back to the conceptual clock. What happens after the chabura of shechita dissolves, so to speak, or is not? It's not. It has to be reconstituted. What's the mechanism of reconstitution according to Rabbi
By
Yehuda?
creating a bias, you now like recreate the idea of the chabura
You can't
from
create
the
another-
carbon.
Yehuda, what
Immediately
happens-
after you do the carbon as a group, you're not considered a group anymore.
Okay, good. You're not considered a group. Okay, but now let's be
You
careful.
need something to bring that.
If you remember,
idea
the initial
back.
question we asked was yes, but what does he mean by
Group.
chabura? So remember, he tolerates a notion of Shtei Chaburos. Now, if you don't remember in the beginning, I said that's kind of
Yeah.
strange. What do you mean Shtei Chaburos? How can you be Shtei Chaburos?
Yeah.
Right? You're always one chabura. So what's chabura according to him?
It's
This is the key. Remember my question before.
So you could have 10
10 people all eating as individuals and all defined as a chabura.
well, what?
chabura is just the carbon.
Just the korban. What do you mean? You're right.
That's the only
I agree.
idea of chabura in this.
Okay.
No,
You
but
mean
you're relating to the
And
fact that the carbon
there's
is
no-
constructed with chabura.
right? Okay. So what now gives you the definition of being
The bias.
This is
the
not
bias?
I thought
The bias.
is Chabura like the manifestation of the bias?
I wouldn't say that. That's a little too far. What are you about to say?
Meaning
Rabbi Yehuda, according to Rabbi Yehuda, what happens to the chabura post shechita?
It's not chabura.
Not a chabura anymore. Okay, you are chayav to eat the Korban Pesach, but the notion of Rav Shimon says, you know what? They both agree at the same point. The chabura dissolves, so to speak. There's no more chabura. Okay, Rav Shimon says it's reconstituted. We want to reconstitute that original chabura. We want that original chabura. So therefore, what do? The notion of bias means that they're mitzaref, or so they eat together. That recreates the notion of the chabura. But Yehuda doesn't hold of that, clearly, because he holds that two chaburos can eat in two different makamos, right? So therefore, there's no mechanism to reconstitute the original chabura that doesn't hold of that. So what's bias doing? So what does bias do then?
It like creates a link back to the carbon
How?
by eating it there.
Well, again, does Rabbi Yehuda actually have a true notion of chabura by achila?
Yeah.
No.
What?
How can we have he doesn't have the
Oh no, because it's done after post. It's done post.
right. In other words, he doesn't have. There's a whole new concept, a whole new phenomenon of chabura achila by Kohen Rav Yehuda, because it's not a chabura. It's not a chabura on the same chabura that did the shechita. Kohen Rav Shimon, it's the same exact chabura. So what is bias? So what's bias? What is he? That's the chiddush. What's it bias doing according to Rav Yehuda? What's it doing? It's simple. He has a simple equation. You were right what you were saying before. Like you started hitting on that notion of if you leave the makom. So now, what do you call it? You're no longer eating the same Korban
Does
Pesach.
the bias allow you to have a Chabura?
Yes. Okay, that's what he's saying. He's saying that, what does bias do? Okay, the notion of bias is that as an individual now, I was part of that chabura that did the shechita. Now I need some mechanism to reintroduce me to the notion of a chabura, an abstract chabura. Okay, it's more of an abstract idea of a chabura. So therefore, what does he say? He says, this is the chiddush. Your koveya, there's the bias is the koveya, so to speak, or the nikva, if you want to call it, but it's the koveya. It's through the house, and now I eat the Korban Pesach, and now I am directly mitzaref to the makom. The makom is that which now defines this notion of chabura again. It's the physical place, not the eating together, but it's the place that defines the chalosh shema chabura.
What does the place define a chabura? I mean, I'm not understanding.
Because when you think of chabura, what do you think of?
It's
You
not
think
a group
of
of people.
It's not a group of people, right? It's not a group of people. What's the chabura? It's that I was part of that Korban Pesach of that shechita experience, not this group. The chabura shechita is us together.
But why do you need the bias to do that?
Yeah,
why
why
can't
is
you
the
say?
bias the-
But why can't you say that the meat itself, the Korban Pesach, the fact that it came from a chabura, that's all you need? That's
Oh, one
what I'm
second.
saying.
That's why. Okay,
That's-
this is what I'm saying. This is the trick of the Yehuda. That's going back to the original question, which is that if you didn't have the Torah telling you bias echad yachal, what would you think?
You just need the carbon.
Right. If you didn't have that, all you know is that you shech the korban as a chabura, and then after that,
Whatever.
we just become individuals. Okay. But so they want to retain a notion of a chabura.
You're saying that the Torah is saying that there's a necessity for a bias.
Now the Torah says bias, okay? So you got to know what they're starting off with. I'm not telling you why I can't answer why the Torah says it must be done on a bias. What I'm telling you is the Torah says bias, and now their question is, what does the Torah mean by bias? So if it means an abstract, see, each one has a strength and a weakness. According to Shimon, it's not really a physical makom, which is not the easy way to read it, okay? Because it's not a physical makom, it's really referring to the abstract notion of a household. But that fits into the notion of what a chabura is. A chabura means a group. Chabura means group of people together. It's more in line with the idea of what a chabura is, but less in line with how you would intuitively look at it as a bias. Rav Yehuda is saying the opposite. Rav Yehuda is saying that no, bias means a makom. But if it means a physical place, so how do you understand the notion of chabura? So what he must be saying is that the chabura idea post shchita has nothing to do with the idea of chabura pre shchita.
But then why do you need a chabura at all?
So what defines? No, because that's as long as what does chabura mean then according to Rabbi Yehuda? What does it mean? What does the notion of chabura mean? Rabbi Yehuda's notion of chabura is not Rav Shimon's notion of chabura. His idea of chabura is that after the shechita is done, so everybody basically dissolves back to being gavras again. But you need some mechanism. You can't just. There's still a notion of chabura that exists, right? And yet the Torah says bias. So what does he do? He takes this whole challenge and says as follows: bias means a physical makom, and what's happening is that when I go ahead and eat my Korban Pesach in my makom, so now I don't care if you want to say it's a positive identity, but the point is that chabura emerges. There's an idea of chabura now, and that idea of chabura, how's it expressed? The expression of that idea is that if I went somewhere else, I can't eat with that because I'm not part of that chabura anymore, even though it's the same Korban Pesach, right? And even though I did the original shechita with those guys, but once I set up this makom,
but you relate to it in a completely different way.
I agreed. Right now, that's a big. Now again, the question is. That's why the way I'm setting up, I think, is a very nice way of setting up. It's a question of there's a strength and a weakness in each position. Okay, Rav Shimon's strength is in his retention of the notion of what a chabura is. He's retaining an idea, but his weakness is that he's mechadesh what a bias is. Rav Yehuda is easier because the Torah says bias, right? And bias means what? A physical makom, right? It's much easier to learn bias to mean a makom, but the problem is that he ditches the notion, the traditional idea of a chabura. So therefore he has to say, so it's more of an abstract notion of chabura, that the chabura is it emerges through the kvias of the ochal in the house. You know what I mean?